Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us. My name is Tanisha Nicole, and I am so excited to be back with you tonight for the 1-year anniversary celebration of Michael Lee's book, The Only Worlds We Know. If you've been coming to our shows before, thank you so very much for coming back. We always love to have you. And if you're new, welcome. I'm so excited that you get to experience such an amazing night that I know we're about to have. Before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that Michael Lee is just phenomenal. You're in for like a whirlwind of just amazement. But not only is he phenomenal, we are going to be doing a sale on his book this weekend, just because it is in such high demand, and we really want to just really celebrate this book with you. And our sale includes personalized signed copies, so Michael Lee will write it out to you, and that can happen for $25. If you want a regular signed copy, they're $20, just like they've always been. And even more excitingly, any edition of the book that's paperback, ebook, digital, audiobook, any of that, we are doing a flash sale of 50% off for that book. So it'll be $8 all weekend. So if you are interested, be sure to check out the links in the description. Head on over to the button shop and pick up your copy of Michael Lee's The Only Worlds We Know, because I'm super stoked that we're celebrating him, and it would be great if you have a copy for your bookshelf, because I think it should just really exist on everyone's. And before we get to the reading, I just want to let you know that this also is a interactive. We get to ask Michael Lee some questions. So this is the time, if you have ever wanted to know how Michael Lee came up with the concept of a poem, what inspires Michael Lee, the struggles of writing a book, or just what made him want to write the book in the first place, now is your time to ask. Throughout the show, we will be collecting your questions and comments, and we'll get them to Michael. So that after he does read, we will be able to answer and direct some of those. So I hope that you stick around to see if your questions get answered, because I know I've got some, and I'm going to throw them into the hat too. And, as much as our feature needs little introduction, he is incredibly talented, and those talents deserve to be recognized. So I'm going to read the bio out of his wonderful book, one we're celebrating tonight, The Only Worlds We Know. Michael Lee is a Norwegian-American writer, youth worker, and organizer. He has received grants and scholarships from the Minnesota State Arts Board, the Loft Literary Center, and the Breadloaf Winners Conference. Winner of the Scotty Merrill Award for Poetry from the Key West Literary Seminar. His poetry has appeared in Ninth Letter, Hayden's Ferry Review, Indiana Review, Poetry Northwest, Copper Nickel, and the Best New Poets Anthology, among others. Michael has worked as a dishwasher, a farmhand, a teaching artist, a social studies teacher, a case manager for youth experiencing homelessness, and he currently manages a youth program using food as a tool for health, wealth, and social change. He works, lives, writes, organizes, and dreams here in North Minneapolis, spending his free time reading books and working in his garden. Everybody, with your virtual applause, please help me as we welcome our feature for the evening, Michael Lee.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? I believe that I'm live. I'm new to technology and that sort of thing. How's everyone doing? You can't answer me, or you can, but I won't know because I'm very far away. In any case, I'm super glad to be here with you all tonight. What a year it has been. I'm feeling especially grateful to be able to share this book with everybody. And so this is I think my second or third virtual reading. And I actually really enjoy these. It's kind of strange because I don't get to see everyone's lovely faces, and I make a joke and then no one laughs because I'm by myself, and then I'm like, oh crap, I'm not funny. So it's harder to read a room and that sort of thing. But I was just looking at the YouTube chat and seeing folks that are here from Australia and folks that got up earlier, staying up late from parts of the world. And so I think that is really beautiful to see that. And so I'm feeling very grateful and very appreciative for everyone who's logged on to watch me read poems. And so yeah, so we're going to read the entire thing. We'll take a break in the middle so I can recaffeinate and hydrate and that sort of thing. And again, ask questions in the sidebar, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. And what else? Let's see. I'm healing from a traumatic brain injury that I got in January from my big, beautiful dog who headbutted me. That's why I've got my earplugs in. And yeah, so if I pass out at any time or just like suddenly perish during the reading, just wait and maybe I'll come back probably. And if not, then well, that's too bad, but we'll all be okay. What else? Yeah, let's start with the poems. I appreciate you all so much. And here we go. This first poem is entitled Anne. And what does it mean when you and your love sleep in the same bed for the last time? And you lie awake saying nothing because you know it. And maybe if you never sleep, you will never wake. And the birds won't sing, and the sun won't know to rise, and you won't ever be alone again. And what does it mean when you can feel her body only a foot from your own? You reached out for her arm or cheek, you would not find anything other than the sheets still warm. And no matter how close she gets to you now, she will always be out of reach. And what does it mean when finally you fall asleep and both awaken to a gunshot in the dark, like a single string in the instrument of night had snapped, and she crawls into your arms for protection, but of course not the real kind, because that bullet, if aimed at you, would have gone through you both. What does it mean when you realize that's all love is? A small and feeble shelter from the inevitable, from bullets and time, from rain and also drought. And if the bullet were just a tool of grammar in the language of the unspeakable, would it not be a conjunction? Would it not be the word and? Or doesn't it connect us to the only two worlds we know? The law of halves is applied to the blade. 2. My math teacher steps toward the blackboard, proving that if you continue to have a distance between 2 points, you will never reach the end. 1. I stood 2 feet from the door, then 1 foot, then 6 inches. 0.5. From the onset of forward motion, the knife must have been 2 feet from the first point of entry. I picture it then being 1 foot, then 6 inches. 0.25. The knife is barely moving now. Its point still hovers over his chest. His shirt is clean and his hair dry, and I have grown older waiting for him to return. 0.125. He has had time to ask his mother why. She has had time to notice his new haircut, his laughter thawing in the air, the basketball spinning forever in his hands. 0.0625. There are still, in the end, atoms shivering between us. In this way, none of us ever really touch, and the blade hovers there forever and my hand never slides across his casket or holds the morning paper hot with his name. Even now, I feel his face warm against mine, wet with laughter, or perhaps zero. How's everyone doing? I asked this, but I can't actually know what you're saying. But I hope everyone is doing well. And it's been such a year, obviously with the pandemic and with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and so many more, and the uprisings that are happening all over the world. And yeah, so I hope that everybody is taking good care of one another, and continuing to be vocal and to be present and to be out, and fighting the many powers that be, in as many ways as we are each able. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now. I'll continue reading poems. Also, you can follow me along if you're newer to my work or what have you. Follow me along on Instagram at Michael Lee Writes. I post photos of nature and my dog and poems and coffee. I think that's mostly it. So if you like those things, come find me at Michael Lee Writes. Hum. The fly suspects I'll be dead soon. Some nights I suspect the same. It hovers, touching me lightly before surprising, lifting off, surprised as I am by my warmth. It is a kind of madness to see the inevitable and be unable to stop it or even articulate its reach, to reach and be made of so many small failures. This buzzing I cannot kill. I cannot leave. I cannot touch the ones I love, made small by love. I try to resurrect you here, where you live now, on the haggard wings of memory. I fail and close my eyes and fail there too. No one even has a face, and still I set the table. No one is coming. No one becomes someone I knew once. I feed its absence and it grows, and all the gone things continue to go. I knock and knock on the walls of my home, and no one answers. I swear if I touch this wall again, a door will burn red in the middle. Self-erasure is applied to my memory. 24. It was the season of ghosts locked in the window panes and the cellar lamp. The grindstone, abandoned amongst the coal, generation after generation. It was the year the abandoned house down the block burned to the ground and another fell into itself, and both sprouted into strange mansions with ghostless windows and storyless attics. My grandmother became the bedsheets, though thinner than the bedsheets, until she vanished, like the words "I love you," just hours after I last said them. Sometimes I believe I had given her permission to go. My ego tells me this. It was the year the ego grew legs and made things tumble and burn. It was the year I didn't sleep, but could not leave my bed. It was the year of vanishing, which I had learned from the dead. It was the year I became the pipe, then the couch, and then the air as it whistled through my bones like a bolt. It was the year I did not eat unless it was moonlight or the blue light of the television. It was the year I did not dream and spoke only in curses. It was the year magic fell dead in the street like a struck crow and darkened beneath the cars as they left and kept leaving. That year my friend was murdered. And though I can remember his laugh and his hair, how it came to a widow's peak, his afro a curled crown, I recall nothing else. Not his eyes, or his body, and now barely his smile. That year, my grandfather also died. I can remember him shaving, but I cannot recall his face or the hair that must have been there. That year, the crops which had not been grown on our land for 100 years came up through the floorboards, and from the faucets, and all of our mouths were full of grain and corn and drought and shadows. It was the year I lived on a train and passed the rusted shipyards outside of New York heading into Connecticut. The train burned and burned like a whistle and drove straight into the sea. That year, from the windows which I guarded like a ghost, that year, I watched someone else's grandfather feeding his cat on the countryside. The man gazed out onto the horizon as though he noticed just then half his life was missing from his memory. I am told that it too was the year I was dying. I would sleep on the kitchen floor after each meal, a plug of tobacco tucked gently into my lip, as though it were a thing that could wake something in me, some dream seed rupturing in the mouth. I don't remember this. It is a false memory. It is the image of the Mona Lisa as described to you by the janitor of the Louvre, and though he or she knows the painting best, the coy look of mischief, the conquering nature of the eyes. Without seeing it, that image is not yours or even mine, just as each story that has ever been told is hardly a replica of light. It was the year I remembered and remembered and remembered, the act of remembering like sharpening a blade until the blade is gone. Only a hilt now, only nothing. It was the year when I was 24 or maybe 12. But probably 6. It was the year in which all years became the same, and my whole life existed in a single dream, fading away, a block of salt worn by rain, drop by drop. Man, this I wrote that poem. I'm noticing at the end when I say 24, maybe 12, probably 6. I wrote that piece, and there's other iterations throughout the book that I'll approach. Its initial form was one long, like 8 or 9 page poem. If you have the chapbook, secondly, finally, it's in there. It's just one piece. In this book, it's separated throughout. So I'll get to section 2 and 3 later. But I wrote that when I was 24, and I'm 32 now, and I'm just like, this is long. It feels like a long time ago. Last year feels like a long time ago, but I'm like, dang, like 8 years. Time goes so fast. So hold on to it as best you can. Not time, but life and each other. This next poem is called Out There. He went back out. The sentence sounds just like that. A sentence to death and misery, or the desire for misery. I've sentenced myself, yes, many times to die. The pills swelling like a fistful of little white pupils in awe of what they can do in the body. If I'm alive now, it is because of how many times I have failed. My first night clean, I wasn't. I threw up in the street and stumbled in late. An old man, sober 30 years, said, give it 6 months. If you don't like it, you can have all your pain and misery back. But it was mine. It was mine, and I could make as much of it as I needed. How much liquor can the body hold until the body leaves itself behind? Each week, a new man enters the room. Each week, another man doesn't come back. What magic to walk through a door and then appear again as ink in the Sunday paper. He went back out. The sentence, a sentence. spoken so often it becomes a single word, an incantation of disappearance, a spell, the addict a magician after all. And you wonder where all these men have gone, but you don't, you know. You know, there was no long winter out there where we dig through dead pines in search of the bottom. Pain, another way to fly. Misery, another way to vanish. Misery, the prettiest word. It flutters on the tongue like sonata, like overture, like other words that carry us into the dark and then beyond it. 10 years ago, I entered a room full of men sitting quietly as if they had been waiting for the last open chair to fill. Now, more than half of them are dead. What is a little more pain when pain's eternal? What's a little more music when the skull is a bell? What's a little more knocking against its walls when the body is a cathedral of doors through which all the angels have already fled? Listen, can you hear it? Out there, the wind aching, the goldenrod reaching up through the snow, where every house is a church, and you are never cold. The dead are just barely beyond what you can touch, and every life you could have had sings. That's section 1. And so there's a line in that piece that I take from Matt Rasmussen, and you'll see in the acknowledgments in that line at the beginning of the book, what's a little more pain when pain's eternal. I think it's the best line in the poem, and it's not mine, and so I want to make sure that people know that it's Matt's line from his book, Black Aperture, which is fantastic and was a big inspiration for me, just generally, but also in crafting this book. I'm thinking just even about how to break the book up into sections and about pacing and about having very heavy subject matter without fully overwhelming the reader, or how to overwhelm a reader in a way which doesn't make you want to just be like, oh my God, I can't, it's unreadable, I can't, I have to go, which was how the early drafts were. I mean, I would read them. I'd be like, this is totally fucking unreadable. No one wants to read this. It's devastating. And so how to kind of give and take with devastation, so that we can handle it, I suppose, as readers. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, welcome to my bedroom. And my bio actually had said that that I live on the north side. And to me, I will always live on the north side, but currently where my physical body resides is outside of Ithaca, New York. I'll be attending Cornell, doing their MFA program in English Lit and creative writing with a focus in poetry. So I'm excited to get to really focus on my writing. So if you hear crickets, that's I am in the country, and enjoying it. So that's where I'm currently located. Like I said, a lot happens in a very short amount of time. All right, so on to section 2. The study of knives and music. The knife is envious of bones, each metatarsal of the foot, collar and jaw, but especially the rib and its motionless rest. The knife remembers when it was bone, when it lived inside of an elk or man and kept the rind together until it didn't, until the body was used against itself. Do you see how everything returns to its maker? The way at its end, an elephant remembers where it once rose like gray light from the earth, its bones cutting through the hide, a moonlit sculpture unearthed by the sharp arms of the clock as they swing at the flank. The sunlight enters, guiding the flies in the rhythmless chatter as if death were a kind of realization the body has. Where else do you expect the knife to go, other than back inside us, here beside the heart where it sleeps like a tucked wing? The knife falls, needle on record.
The LP spins backward. Sound siphoned from vinyl, the disc wiped clean. The music shakes inside the amplifier. His body begins to unravel in the arms of a clock. Blood unspooled. His body returns, cotton drifting skyward. The wind gathering seeds. The phone falls from his hand, though remains on. The moment of his death lives, now in his cousin's right ear, and in the wires between them. Every sneaker strung over the lines from Palo Alto to Minneapolis fell to the ground. Another murder of crows perched along the line, felt his voice unhinge from his throat and rifle through the sky. But they did not hear it. This language of grief is not a spoken language. The only song that can be written in its tongue is no song at all. Is mourning, is traffic before it is traffic, when 300 million cars across America sleep, and somewhere, east of everything I know, dawn opens, a red fist unlatching. The insomniac maps the night. A group of dead friends is called a memory. A grouping of grave robbers, a scalpel. I know of a surgery that removes nothing, rearranges each vertebra into a necklace of names, speaking into the dark, asking me to join them, to let the night wear me thin. Each second a lathe, ground me down until I knew the exact hour in which traffic is born, and in which I am most likely to consider running this coin-thin light across my neck. I have found the hour in which my dead friends congregate and knock against my head, laughing, bouncing a basketball against the door. One points to the last hour of good light, and as I begin to lace my shoes, says, hurry up, open the door, just open it. There's a lot of poems in here that I don't read out loud too often. Obviously when you do shows, usually 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes, 30 or 35 if it's a longer set. And so I usually kind of pick like the same poems wherever I go. But there's so many in here that I really enjoy. And I feel very lucky to be able to get to read them to you all in this context. We'll just keep on trucking is what we'll do. Also, I feel so. I say as I totally stop the reading. So last time we did this, or last time I was a part of a reading on the internet with Button, I didn't look at the YouTube chat at all. I didn't even have it open because my computer decided to not even be able to play YouTube for like 9 months. Magically, it started doing it again as soon as I moved here. I don't know how that happened, but it all works now. So I didn't even look. But then later I was like, okay, let me go on my phone and check out the chat and see what people thought about the show and if they liked it, if they had issues, and whatever you can learn from how people respond to a performance. And there was like a totally unanimous agreement that I was a dweeb. Like 35 people were like, he's such a fucking dweeb. Very endearingly, so I appreciate that. And I totally own the dweeb status. I'm absolutely a dweeb. But then there was also someone who said, what did they say? They're like, he's got such chaotic energy. It's so
It's so fucking chaotic. And someone was like, yeah, isn't it just nuts? He seems like total chaos. And then someone else was like, oh my God, I agree. Just totally chaotic. Yeah, I love it. I was like, what? So now I like only think of myself anytime I do a internet show. I'm sure there's a better term for it that's out there, but I'm going to call it an internet show. I only think of me as a totally chaotic dweeb. And I wonder, I'm like, am I being chaotic and dweeby? And if so, do the people like it? What's happening? So here I am bringing you chaotic dweeb energy since 1988. And I hope my other chaos dweebs. Oh, that's a great band name. If only I played instruments. If any of you would like to join me in a band called the Chaos Dweebs, email me and we'll get it started. I think I would like to just scream into the microphone. Not even words, just holler every song for 3 minutes. All right, here we go. This next poem is called Indifference. I've stared out a second-story window all day, through the soft falling of snow and the intermittent rumble of truck engines outside the granary. I've sat alone on the stage of an empty theater at midnight and played the piano poorly for no one at all. I sat in the last row and watched the stage lights, the dust hovering beneath them. And the musty curtains do nothing at all for no one. I've turned on the lights of the marquee in a small Minnesota town, standing before the empty theater above which I briefly lived, until a single bulb flickered out like a firefly in rain. I walked the river and the steel bridge at night. I rested beside the dam and felt as insignificant as its miss, and in this way, briefly free. What was each brick in that town if not indifferent to my wandering in its dim light? And what is indifference if not a kind of violence we must each survive, but won't? The indifference of crows and water, the indifference of bluffs and deer crossing the highway at night, the indifference of cities and of clocks, the indifference of our own blood whirring like a mill wheel inside us where death is always monotonous. The heart stops, and that's the end of it. A sip of water now, and I encourage you all to do the same. It's important we hydrate. Reminds me of a story. This is gonna be the longest show of all time. I'm sure there's not, was it 8:37 my time? I'm sure there's not time for all these tales, but so I always have like these little clean canteen bottles. I've always got like 30 of the same kind because I'm always misplacing them. And one time I had 2 identical bottles and one was sitting on the sink and it was soaking in soapy water filled to the top. You know, after some time, the bubbles settle, so it just looks like water. I was letting it soak for a day before I went and, give it a real good, thorough clean. And I was doing the dishes, and I had my other bottle. And the way that I drink water is I don't like sip. I just chug the whole fucking thing, or half of it, right? And I'm doing the dishes, and I realize all of a sudden that I'm parched. And I just grabbed the bottle, and I just start chugging. And I don't know, what is this, 16.9 fluid ounces would be my guess. I can't confirm that anywhere. But I drank the entire bottle before I realized I drank the wrong one, and it was the soap water. And I immediately just threw up like projectile vomit, like all over the floor of my kitchen. And it was horrifying. Mind you, this was Valentine's Day, and I was totally alone, and that was fine. I was totally fine with being alone on Valentine's Day because it's a fucking corporate holiday anyway. And then I ran to the bathroom and I slipped in my soapy vomit. And then I fell. Oops, hold on. I think I just lost my Zoom. Back to meeting. Nope, I'm in the Zoom. Great, perfect. I hate computers. And then I fall in the soap vomit, and I hit the ground, and I fucking throw up again because I'm trying to run to the bathroom, and now I'm like covered in the shit, and then I'm like running to the bathroom, like trying not to throw up a third time and fall in it. And it wasn't until that point where I was like, then I became sad upon being alone on Valentine's Day. It wasn't until I fucking fell in my own vomit and vomited again. So if you have duplicate water bottles, do so with caution. Be very safe with your duplicate water bottles. Okay. If anyone is joining in that moment where I tell a story of throw up and think I've been booted out of the meeting, but I have not, welcome. Hello. My name is Michael Lee. I'm a poet. I wrote a book called The Only Worlds We Know. Chaotic energy. I get it. I totally get what that person was talking about. This is totally chaotic dweeb energy. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. That's definitely who I am. Spot on analysis, internet person who I don't recall. If you're watching, name yourself in the comments later on so I can congratulate you. In any case, I wrote this book and it's its first birthday today. And so we're celebrating it. We're going to read the entire thing. If you don't already, you can follow me on Instagram, Michael Lee Writes. And I post pictures of poems and my dog and nature. And I should probably just post stories, just videos of bizarre throw up stories. I'm sure everyone would enjoy following me much more. I think I'll do that actually. And you can buy this book online. It's half off all weekend. So $8 if you've been wanting to get a hold of it. And haven't felt just fiscally able to do that this past year, but you feel like $8 is a manageable amount, you can do so now. It's also half off on ebook and audiobook. So if you'd like to hear me read without the stories in between the poems, you can download the audiobook. Or if you're a Kindle fan, you can, or another device, you can download it there. Also, I'm going to be signing books. I got 300 of these sent to my house out here. I'm going to sign them all, and so you can buy a signed copy. And if you'd like me to personalize it with a note to you or to a loved one or even to an enemy, right? Maybe you hate my book and you want to gift it to an enemy, or you really like it and you want to like totally fuck with the enemy's mind. I support that. I can write them a very nasty note or a very nice note to trick them. So if you would like to get a personalized book for you or a loved one or a foe, I'm all about it. I think that's good. So we'll continue reading the poems now. I'm sure my mother is somewhere watching, just being like, oh, thank God, just read the script. Just read the script. I know. Back to the script. All right. Sound lost in the north. And there, the light clank and moan of the wind chimes spread out across the garden. An unexplained crack in a windshield, frost across a pane of glass. You could watch it all at once. Minnesota winter is like that. Far enough north, you have to strain to hear a distant rifle, especially if it finds its mark. The sound disappears with the bullet into the meat. I've known nights so cold, the body is unlikely to bleed. I have braved my own heart and swung a hammer so honestly that smoke curled off the nail. Still, there was no sound. Each moment of winter is so faint and silent, it is a memory even as you live it. And so it was then. As the hammer fell with such repetition, it became slow and soft, like snow, falling again and again and again, until the birds froze mid-song and the wordless chimes swayed like dark ropes. Erasure applied to my memory. 12. It was the season of ghosts in the wind and the abandoned coal. Generation after generation, the house burned to the ground, fell into itself and sprouted strange, ghostless windows.
storyless attic, my grandmother became thinner than the words I had given her. My ego tells me it was the year the ego made things burn. It was the year I didn't leave my bed. It was the year of vanishing. The year I became the pipe, then the air as it whistled through. The year I did not eat. It was the year I did not dream and spoke only in curses. Magic fell dead in the street and darkened and kept leaving. That year my friend was murdered. His laugh, his hair, I recall nothing else. That year my grandfather died shaving, but I cannot recall his face that must have been there. That year, 100 years came from the faucets, and all of our mouths were full of drought and shadows. It was the year I lived and burned like the sea, like a ghost feeding the horizon his memory, as though it were a dream, described by the janitor of love and mischief. Each story that has ever been told is hardly light, the act of remembering, sharpening until nothing. It was the year when I was, or maybe, but probably, it was the year in which all years became the same, and my whole life existed in a single dream, worn by rain. The pill, a small moon or bomb which kills no one quickly, dissolves like a moment, over time and never completely. The pill, a tooth of light, enters the body. A blinding seed tears open the dark of me. Hot lash of lightning splitting the sky. A zipper across a black bag. The pill, infinite. The pill, a solar system in the dead man's eye. The pill, a white shadow dragging night behind it. I reached so far into the medicine cabinet, my hand came back out through my mouth. I looked into the mirror for so long I forgot who I was, introduced myself, tried to say my name, but instead a fist swung like a curse and shattered the glass. The study of words and heaven. Given that the etymological opposite of remember is not actually forget, but is in fact dismember, I ask you now to consider the way we've been reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein all wrong. The doctor's patchwork monster was remembered to life. And so, is this not an allegory for the ways in which our memories betray us? Is it true? If I remember a dead boy 1,000 different ways, 1,000 new boys will rise from my mouth. Will the sea give him back? Do you recall when the bill of boyhood was passed, requiring that all ash gathered be remembered into fire, and such flame be returned to wood with which we rebuilt our childhood homes as we remembered them? And so they were, of course, erected backward, many jagged, some built upside down, some with parents where there were none, some with food and not hunger, some with grandparents and not ghosts. By what artifice are we held together? What is the difference between memory and dream? For which is it appropriate to grieve? If both were a kind of kindling, which might you suggest we burn? Child becoming smoke. Child becoming the morning newspaper. I burned each page and watched the words curl in the dark wind. Angel-faced boy, the kind of face saints line up to name. Once, I knew a boy with a face that was a kind of heaven. It held the dead and the dreams of the dead, which is to say it held him and his dreams. And if I go here, to the face of heaven when I go, St. Peter will stand at his teeth as always, only a few endless inches beneath those even more endless eyes. Endless when they were brown deep as earth. Endless now because they are filled with earth. And what does the earth see but everything? What is the earth but a single massive eye? Ask me where I'll go when I go, and I'll say, that face, the size of the sky. Poems sneak up on me sometimes, especially the ones that I don't read out loud as often. Oh shit, we're in the middle of the poem. Once a year, I wear your jacket and listen to the 67 cents jingling in the pocket. I should tell you, it has bought me nothing. Not sleep, nor dreams, nor peace, not even a single tooth trapped in your smile, trapped in your face, trapped behind the 9 o'clock television screen. When you were killed, I began to write letters to my own murderer. I dropped them off at the post office with no address. Now, in my 30th year, one by one at my doorstep. What a terrible magic, the day we find out who we really are. Certainty. This apartment now with no one in it. Only the sky forcing its way through the screens. Me, the wind, a single mouse chattering away until the trap closes its mouth. The neighbors screaming. Something about a knife. I know the song, I think. Each letter extends almost to the brink until the sound nearly runs out, but it is there, still, almost still, a whisper caught on the windowsill. That word, so many times, like a secret, a password to some door, a secret knock, the way all secrets work against the body, demanding entry, and then row. The boat fills with water as we cross the wide lake. You bail with a cracked bucket while I row. We both laugh, guided by the campfire burning on the distant shore made of driftwood. Another boat we found smashed among the rocks, wood lapping against stone. A kind of laughter in its own way, I think, in this moment of my name. Oh, that song the church ladies sang to me about rowing my boat to shore before I had been to enough funerals to swear off church for good. Though somehow I find myself praying through my laughter as the water gathers around my ankles. I try it sometimes. Prayer, that is. In secret, but I keep noticing I'm doing it. Look, I've caught myself. I'm not even a half-decent non-believer. Every adventure is a creative new way to die. I keep living despite. I can't ever seem to get it right. Once my skin crackled electric and a god got wedged in my skull. I tried to leap out a window and join him. I woke, handcuffed to a gurney, my jaw wired shut by what I saw and could not say. Of course, I smoked up the next day. Of course, I took the pills and then woke and kept waking. I huffed the vapor and collapsed and kept on rising in my stupid and simple way. Fuck it. In my favorite dream, I row that boat forever. The fire finds its way inside me. I've been clean for 10 years, sometimes barely. I could throw it away if I wanted. And in my favorite dreams, I do. I want, I give up, and the water is so goddamn cold it keeps me alive forever, which is another way of dying again and never quite being dead. And that's the horror of life. The water so green it shatters my sternum in there, a single glowing stone. I want it in my palm to make it skip and crackle like a rat scratching away in the vein. I laugh and wake up laughing, and I simply want, and what, dear God, is on the other side of want? I want that too. My want is so wide, I cannot cross it. Tapestry in 5 parts. Driving north through Minnesota in winter. Our family car without heat. The passenger door held shut with rope. My sisters and I in our snowsuits squeezed into sleeping bags and buckled tightly in the back seat. It is the closest we will ever be. The abandoned house down the street, burning to the ground. The neighbor boys and I cheer in its thundering light. A firefighter is dragged from the house, laid unmoving in the street. We tell ourselves he is still alive and continue. 3. In the field beside the ashen ruins of that abandoned house, farm equipment unused since the neighborhood was a farm. A rusted plow the color of embers and clay. New machines make everything into dirt. Then slowly a cul-de-sac. 5 mansions begin to form and finish the work of the fire. 4. My friend sits in his car nearby while I grapple with a boy on the sidewalk. I am on top, punching him in the face. My friend, laughing on 3 tabs of acid, cranks classical radio and cheers as he narrates every swing. I continue, an aria, snow falls. I continue, working diligently like fire, a machine, making heat where there is no heat. Somewhere else, more laughter. Perhaps it is mine. 5. It's winter still. Always. Somehow. I am above the soil by luck at this point. My friend next door is wheeled from her house beneath a white sheet. Her husband, home from rehab that morning, sits shivering on the front steps and says nothing. We go to a 12-step meeting that evening. He helps me change my tire. We pretend we are friends too. He asks how to stop it. Years later, he will drink himself to death, and I will hold a pistol in my hand and wonder. Man, this section of the book gets intense. Shit. Oh, man. I haven't just read through it straight through since, when I was editing it. So in any case, if you need to take a breather, have some water, hydrate. Don't drink soap. It's not good. Or fucking bleach or whatever our dumb fuck president asks people to do to not get coronavirus. Oh my God. What a fucking shit show. I was about to go on a tangent about fascism in the post office, and I'm not going to do that but I probably should. Just pay attention. They're trying to steal the election. It's easier done than I think we would like to think. So, in any case, we will continue. Both with poems and no matter what will happen, we will continue. New Year's Eve, 2015. Spike is still dead. Dawn, too. The dirt across Spaceman's grave is fresh and empty, and the last thing I said to him was to shut the fuck up. I meant it. 2 nights later, he did. Closed his mouth around as many pills as he could fit in his palm and never opened it again. I told him we'd get coffee this winter. It's winter now. I swear, I meant that too. I've had enough for the both of us. I cannot sleep. Time unravels into mist across the Atlantic. And I know the next year has come bearing the world in its palms like wet fruit when gunfire wakes the dark. And the snow comes down slowly, a little more after each clack, like it's been stuck up there all year. As a boy, I didn't understand why my uncle ran out into the snow in his long underwear just in time to unload his .40 caliber upward through the needles of the pines. But I understood he missed his father. And I have always understood snow. Each bullet pleading for the dark to just let go. That's all this is. Shooting the sky a kind of demand. Give us back those we love. Open up and let me take back the things I said or never said, drifting across the frozen lake and the silent boulevards. Heaven is so stingy, and there are so few snowflakes fluttering past the street lamps that if they were pills, I could not kill myself. If they were pills, I'd probably try anyway. I'll try anything that doesn't work, because it might. My faith is so thin now. It could slip by me as easy as a whole year. I don't own a gun because I'd use it. I don't shoot anything anymore. I don't pray either. What's the difference and what's the use? I'd free everyone or join them. Let me in, God. My God, let me out of here. Each bullet is a single knuckle rapping upon the tomb of the world, and there are bodies on both sides. Which is mine, O Lord? Which is mine? I joked about on my Instagram that I'll be reading all sad poems and one happy poem. And this is true. This is true. I'll try to joke in between about soap and other such things as much as possible without, keeping you here for 4 or 5 hours. But a few more poems and then we'll take a break, a short break, so I can use the restroom and get a coffee and that sort of thing. But the happy poem, it is in the second half of the book. So if you are looking forward to the happy poem, I encourage you to stick around for the second half. Oh, what's this? There might even be 2 happy poems, or at least this one is somewhat neutral and not devastating. So that's good. I'm just flipping through. And you know what? That one's pretty positive. I'd say at least 2.5. I think on the back half. So it really gets light, right, on the second half. So we're going to Mordor, and then we're going to work our way back to the Shire. Okay, but we're still in Mordor. So back to the sadness. All right. Chaotic energy. Leaving. Clean the way a fly is clean, or the way a wound is clean, and a maggot is clean and cleaning. The city clean is a casket before the body is placed like a pill inside of it. Clean as a pipe washed white by fire. When I was a boy, I cursed so much my mother scrubbed my mouth with soap. And now what curses do I have left to clean the dead? When I left, I drove east in a car painted the same color as my luck. Out of Minneapolis, where the road opens like a stone tulip into all other roads. My last sight of home, a man I knew once driving beside me. When I saw him, I saw he did not see, but was a kind of sight. Nothing like the man I once knew, but more like the clothes this man will one day leave behind when he goes. Last I heard, he had already gone, guided by the winding fingers of meth and its nails made of smoke. What can I say now but nothing? What can I say as I head east and all I hear is a dark rattling trailing me like wedding cans for the marriage of dirt and rain? What can I say as I pass through Wisconsin's endlessly green and stupid fields and come upon a car cleaved in two? The bodies that had carried litter the highway like salt. What a beautiful day to leave home and let your mouth hang open. What can I say as I pass torn up highway after highway riddled with skeleton crews? In the right light, this thoroughfare looks like a glimmering bone. I mean, a dark breeze ridden with flies, heat cooking the meat straight from the ribs of deer along I-94 like dead lanterns leading me home. Home to what now? To dirt, to glass, to wind, hollow as a skull and the summer caught inside of it. Somewhere there's a classroom comprised of all my dead friends as they were once, pledging allegiance to a Polaroid developing forever. If old age is not defined by time, but by one's proximity to death, then I grew up with a group of 13-year-olds who were 1,000 years each. Let us sit together now at this table of holy oak. Let us eat well on we do not have the words to describe. Please pass the gunmetal and salt. Let me preserve this documentation of ruin. Some nights I want to stay this way forever. I want to sing until the grass sews my mouth shut. What is the exact key of an instrument decomposing beneath the dirt? Every road east is a single thread in America's long taxonomy of pain. There is no word for a journey comprised entirely of leaving. What left was there to do but go on driving east with everything I owned, past an endless field of sunflowers, 100-mile stretch of yard sales, 88 cutlass, grandma's jewelry, the hickory cabinet. God, if I could make money off this memory, I might just give you everything. Erase my memory. This is the final section of the erasure. 6. It was the season of ghost wind and coal. The house burned to the ground and sprouted storyless words. I didn't vanish. I became the pipe. Then the air. I did not eat the dream. Only curses, dead, dark, and leaving. That year was murdered. That year came from the faucets and burned. At the lake. At the lake, you will never touch again. I offer myself, reach to sever the same water by which I am severed, hewn by the wide blue blade. Only my shadow touches land. The shadow its own departure. The way light is the only witness to what it touches and cannot itself be seen. Only what it illuminates. A single sparrow studying nightfall, learning nothing about nothing until its body and song, its most dedicated scholarship are gone. Still, in their absence, there was a boy, and then there wasn't. His shadow broke free like a single witness, refusing to witness anymore, running darkly away. The shadow, so light on its feet, it seems we could call it flight if it would simply lift off the hot grass. The shadow is everything removed. The shadow is proof of what light cannot do and what terrible things we have done beneath it. All right, Jill, so that is the first half of the reading. I first, before we go on a break, I want to just dedicate that poem to the writers in the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop at Faribault Correctional Facility. Some of the absolute best writers that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. I was lucky enough to join them for a class or a couple classes and teach a class this year. And unfortunately, that class got cut short by coronavirus and not being able to go into the facility any longer. So it's been really difficult to navigate, still trying to do the class. And I've had such a hard time with screens and looking at screens with my, TBI. And that's why I got these glasses that keep falling down my face and, actually have the screen off for the majority of the reading. But this was their favorite poem of the book. It was really cool. They all had got a copy of the book and they read it, and I got to go talk with them about the collection. And it was my favorite reading I think that I've ever done. And a lot of them had like memorized the book, just like not even because they read it a lot of times, but just like the most brilliant cats I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And they'd be like quoting shit back to me. I'd be like, wait, what? I'd be like, wait, what page is that on? And they'd be like, oh, page 75. You're like, oh my God, how do you remember that? I don't even know it's on page 75. So yeah, that poem is dedicated to them. So yeah, I'm gonna grab a quick coffee, use the restroom. I encourage everyone to do the same. Stretch a little bit. I know I'm not used to sitting in this chair at this particular angle for very long, so I'm gonna do a little stretch. So yeah, we're gonna do a little break, 5 minutes and 5 minutes only. So don't get left behind because we'll keep this ship sailing forward. All right, and break.
Welcome back, everybody. I know I'm super excited for the second half of the show, just as much as you are, but I just wanted to take a second to thank you all for being here. If you're joining a little later or just catching up now, my name is Tanisha Nicole. I'm the host this evening. Not really doing a lot of hosting, though, because Michael Lee is doing a phenomenal job reading through his debut book, The Only Worlds We Know. We're just about to start part 2, but I just wanted to shout out a couple things from our great intermission. If you love this book, I would just love to invite you to come back out on Sunday, August 16th, because we will be celebrating Rachel Wiley's Fat Girl Finishing School. It's going to be her release party. We're going to have opening features from Ebo Barton as well as Golden, both of which are phenomenal poets, followed up by a reading similar to this one with Rachel, though it won't be the full book. And we just wanted to invite you. Please, the link in the description is all there. You can get everything you need. And without further ado, let's take it back to Michael Lee.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tanisha. Give a round of applause for Tanisha Nicole Tyler. They are just like one of my favorite people in the entire world. Button just has such a great, everybody. Spencer and Riley, who you can't see, but they're doing things. Also, Spencer is like the tech guru. He taught me how to use Zoom, so that was very good. Got my coffee. Hope everyone else did as well. Oh my God, that's good. I make such good coffee. It's stupid how good it is. In any case, happy to be back. Clearly, I'm not someone who needs coffee at, what time is it? At this hour, but I'm an adult, so I get to do what I want. Yeah, also check out Rachel's reading on Sunday. Funny story quick about Rachel Wiley, who I met in 2010, I think, at the individual World Poetry Slam. Yep, in Cleveland. I got locked out of my hotel and slept on a bus stop in the rain, which sucked. But other than that, it was a good time. And I had this poem like a letter to Bristol Palin, because Bristol Palin, Sarah Palin's daughter, had like just gotten a big book deal. And I don't remember what the poem was about. It was like being mad that she got a book deal. Or something. And I mean, none of the Palins should ever get any kind of airtime doing anything at all. So it was worthwhile. But there's a joke in the poem, or I thought it was a joke. I thought it was funny. And I call her a clown jacket. And so I'm in this room of all these people and I call her a clown jacket, which I thought was, a funny insult. And no one fucking laughs except for Rachel Wiley, who is just lost it. Just laughed her ass off, and I will forever appreciate Rachel for that. And now, so I'm no longer Michael Lee to Rachel. Rachel only calls me Clown Jacket, which I think is fitting. In any case, it's not like the water. I actually have to finish this before we start, because by the time I get to it, if the temperatures are off, you can't drink cold coffee. I mean, the espresso, the temperature is very important. So you guys are just going to have to watch me drink this. It always gets better like halfway through. That's always the best time for the espresso. After, about a minute or so. Golly, it's good. Tremendous. Okay, well. What if that was my job? What if I just drank coffee publicly? And that was what I was paid to do. Just people come and watch me drink coffee on a stage. That wouldn't be a bad gig, actually. All right. In any case, on to part 2 of the reading. And again, if you're just joining us and you're wondering who this bizarre individual is on your YouTube screen, it's me, Michael Lee, and I wrote a book called The Only Worlds We Know, and today is its first birthday, and we're celebrating it. Its anniversary, and you can get half off copies of the book, ebook, audiobook, all that. Go to buttonpoetry.com, 50% off. If you want a signed copy, I've got bunch of books here in my house. I'm going to sign them all. If you want a personalized copy with a little note to yourself or a family member, a loved one, or an enemy even, you can do that and go online. And I don't know exactly how they're doing it, but the internet will tell you. If you go to buttonpoetry.com, fill it out, send it in, and I will personalize a book for you. Other than that, Q&A, ask questions in the YouTube chat box, and Riley's going to get me a list that I'll answer at the end. I'll answer as many as I can. What else? Yep, follow me, Michael Lee Writes, on Instagram. I have a Twitter by the same thing, but I don't really know how to use Twitter, so it's not worth following me there. Yeah, so anyway, here we go, part 2. The study of the dead and puzzles. The knife does not kill the body. It simply informs it that death is possible. A sudden light flooding the room. The one corner of the house we never knew existed until all other rooms had darkened. Once, I saw myself in a storefront's glass and felt lost somewhere in the middle. A single word stuck between two people. I wondered if dying would be as simple as shattering a window. I knelt beside the lake and drank the water, for I was in it. This is how the body misinterprets thirst. I knew a man who drank himself to death. It was not the alcohol that killed him. It was his reflection which never left the glass, not even as it fell and the whiskey carried him across the floor. We found death to be a stain. We scrub from a shirt until the shirt is gone. What about death isn't a riddle? A wolf slays a deer alongside a highway, parts the ribs like a boy peering through branches, and crawls inside. First, its head disappears, then the shoulders. When I slow my car to the side of the road, only its hind legs are kicking outside the body. I walk toward the animals, now a new, singular animal, not split, but made by splitting, the body thrashed open. I gaze inside to find nothing but a citadel of nothing, bare hide and ligaments. I speak your single and holy name into its belly. The sound rattled like a spell. The sound grew distant, and then it was gone. The deer opened its eyes. The construction of lies and memory. There is a simple way to begin. Gather grass and dust, beams and beams of light or pine, fire and smoke, the smell of loam opening like an orchard after a good rain, the monarchs lilting above the bull thistle. A lie is built as simply, as thin and as delicate, and it surrounds us like the fields two children might lie in and gaze upward, wondering if all that blue is real. Like the field, not far from my childhood home, its small world and smaller creek where I pulled crawfish carefully from the reeds. So small, it is gone now, replaced by grass. So small, my younger sister does not remember it. So small, it has become a lie, I suppose, but I'll gladly tell it. Gladly hold it here and let you feel its pincers, gentle at first, and then drawing the slightest blood, a single drop like a far-off planet in the eye of a telescope. Those years, 20 years now in the distance, also the size of a planet no one will ever touch. A planet so far off it's not even real. It couldn't be. Even if you were there once, even if when you turn to stare upon it, until your eyes widen and dry, it feels almost as if it's staring back and shimmers
and blinks like you, certain but not. Rain. The rain has begun to fall. If I'm lucky, the fire will go out and you will follow. Cross my mind for a final time, or at least take me with you. The only way through is through. If love is a city two people make, then it is also a place that has no use when its people leave. Though here I am, tending to its dust. Nothing moves but could. Even the city's single bird, birthed by our laughter, sings a single note, and that one note hangs permanently in the air. This morning, I shot a bird with a gun not strong enough to kill it. I wanted to watch it fail. I wanted to steal the sky with a single curl of my finger. I wanted to know if what I want is ever what I want. You were right. I'm not shit, and you are gone. Spool west. Last time I drove through Ohio, I was headed east. The woman I love still answered the phone. Spaceman was still alive. John, too. I returned home, driving west along this unending spool of road, the seam along which this country begins to fray. I try to unstitch my one singular life. Even though it is yours, it never is quite the one you want. The engine works without knowing why. I go on much the same. I can almost fool myself into believing I have become a machine. I stare off into the shapeless fields, lost in the music of no music. Only the hum. I swear, when I close my eyes, I can still see the road's pale glow, the median paint alive with a million crushed seashells mixed in with the paint. For a moment, it's all one dark, glittering wave curling beneath me. I ride it out into the world, the unending horizon dark and darkening. I almost believe I could go on forever, just like this. Part 5. The study of doors and knowing. If a single pupil devours the iris, if a black moon is discovered inside each of our cells, if we lived in a kingdom of silence, if an aria were to rise splitting open the boreal dark which darkens, if pain a gate, pain a lake frozen, solid save its single eye widening, if sight begets sight, if eyes open across the body, if pain a sheet of paper incised, one stroke at a time, if fistfuls of night removed like black hair from a drain, if each letter a wound, if we are all two people, and as we sleep we are awake in another body, if that body dies, if we never sleep again, if I still feel the boy inside me like a hunger, if each letter on the page is a speck of his blood across snow, if each letter here could open, if we might crawl inside one now, if each vowel is the mouth of a cave overlooking a new world, if we might dangle our feet over the edge. Boy who was himself a door. 15 red keyholes appearing wherever the key fell, the way a shovel is a key to the earth, though the boy never opens wide enough to walk through, just enough to see into the infinite rooms lit with planets gazing back out. Boy with a galaxy locked inside him, Boy with blood black and shining, riddled with stars. His blood ran from the house and into the street where it continued on to the sea, lifted into the sky, and then became it. Now, there is a place in the Pacific where it is always night. His magnificent blood, a wet universe gazing down on us. His blood, an endless dream lit by stars, as it runs from the keyholes opening like 15 eyes which see forever. Look, past Fredrikstad and Oslo, past Tinset and Røros, beyond villages so small, they take the names of the largest family in town. I catch a glimpse of a house just beyond the road. In its one lit window, a man stares out, unmoving, his gaze a kind of shadow wandering through dusk and into the hills. To what? To his lover who is gone, to a life which contains neither of them. I have looked this way before at the woman I loved, the many times we parted at airports and train stations until eventually we let go and she did not look back. And if his eyes then were stars above that nameless road, then I think they would be the last two to go out. And though I can't say why, it is this gaze I carry with me. Not the gaze of my mother or father as they closed my bedroom door and watched the dark fold over my face. Not the gaze of my grandmother dressed in a thin white light and a hospital gown as she said my name and then turned over toward the wall. Not the sick calf before it was taken into the woods and shot. Not my childhood dog before we drove her quietly to a quieter death. Eventually, everything that can look will look away. And our memory, which is a kind of faith, will be unable to carry even itself. Smoke. His father, I hear, stays drunk, refuses to die or can't now. He lies awake listening to his son who lives now in the soft hum of floodlights above the court at night, between the shuffle of the shoes of boys who are men now, if even barely, who learned to grow somehow from a boy who would be a boy forever, a boy dissolving, now smoke and smoke. Gloma. The canoe glides through the river, a single bolt of black lightning, a comb sliding through the hair, a tangled memory released. One by one, the orange lights of farmhouses turn on slowly. Behind their windows, each house wakes to look out onto the river, past the breathing sill of the body, past the one tractor still rumbling across the dark field as it races, the first frost stirring just behind the pines, and the mining town with no mine now, past the cattle and their bells, a steady music so familiar the entire village came to believe it was the stars that were ringing. Along the spent horizon, the distance between us and machines is less than we might think. What animates metal is flesh. What stops flesh is metal. You should know where we're going, where we have found ourselves again. The simple and tired metaphor, the derricks dip down across every landscape, toward the trembling crust of the earth, an arm swinging as if possessed. Yes, of course, the earth is a body. Yes, it is his. Yes, I'm tired of it too, of so many things. But in the long history of thieves, no one is spared, least of all you or I, dear reader. If you'll listen, though, just a little longer, I'd like to steal a few more moments of your time and give you a small story. A group of robbers run, smiling but afraid, into the long night. The next morning, the shopkeeper lists what is missing: shoe polish, a locket without a face, a mirror into which everyone who looks is young again, defined suddenly only by what is gone. Let me say it this way instead, and just once. My friend is dead. There is no easy way to explain everything that leads up to the end. My grief sleeps, misshapen by rain, beside the entrance to some lightless building. I do not know the doorway without it. I can't even remember what's on the other side. I didn't put that in the acknowledgments, but perhaps I should have. That last bit is vaguely referencing Jorge Luis Borges as a story in his book Labyrinths, and he just mentions about how the story essentially talks about how things are defined in relation to what's around them. And he talked about a person who was experiencing homelessness, who lived in this door frame, and people could no longer remember the door frame without the person. And when he died, the door disappeared, and that an abandoned aqueduct was visited by birds, and the birds were the only reason that the aqueduct stayed there. If the birds left, then the aqueduct would disappear, because the birds were all that kept the memory of this structure alive. And I love that story. And I should have made a note of it here, now that I think of it. In any case, this poem is called Q+As. I really like the second half of this book, or the last section. I like the whole thing. I think it's a decent book. But the last half is just like my favorite kind of writing that I do in the book. And this is one of my favorite pieces called Q+As. So we'll dedicate this to Kariama and Birgulf and Liva and Alan. Q+As. I suppose it simply comes down to this. Once I threw grass seed beside a river. I visited the plot each morning before stumbling half awake to the barn, where I would milk the cows for hours, dodging their hard, mud-caked tails. Soon after, the small green haulms beginning to tremble in the breeze. A little more each morning, as fog hid everything else. Even my desire to leave, which carries me, I think. I visited so often the farmers named that small stretch of river Q+As, or Michael's Place. If nothing else, there's a small patch of grass along a river in Norway where children swim in the summer, where the water still carries winter in its melting starlight. And the Swedes come across the border to fish in their waist-high boots and not speak to each other as they flick their poles back and forth as if casting a spell. I have tried this trick before. Over water and nothing. Over a body stilled by time and still nothing. Years before me, there were others. Before the Vikings and even before the Sami. And one of their stone tools lies in the wooden chest in the farmer's dining room, like a secret heart tilled up one spring years ago. This stone with its ancient line carved around the middle where the hilt of the tool would have been tethered makes its way into conversation over boiled potatoes and fish. I know. You don't need to know any of this, but I have to tell you all the same. Because I left that place, and I left this place here to get there, and I'll leave it again. And every summer is hot with my obsession to go. And I wake early and tend to my gardens and watch nothing change until it does. Time flicks back and forth effortlessly and stretches out unspooled. The clock is a more complicated machine than the gun, and certainly the knife. But they all have the same final trick. There will one day be another war and another. And the theory of everything comes down to grass and is simply grass, which grows long and green and endlessly. There are 100 ways to destroy it, and there are 100 more ways it will find its way back out of the dirt. Just adjust this computer here a little bit. Hope everybody's doing well. Hydrate, make sure we're hydrating. Water is very important. Okay, just a couple more here, and then we'll go to some Q&A. So if you've got questions, please put them in the YouTube chat, and Riley will field them and send some over my way, which would be great. I get a bunch of questions on Instagram and just with like the TBI and depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I really want to answer them and my brain like short circuits and I can't even formulate a response or type because you really got to like look at the screen. And I've got screen protectors on my laptop, so it's a little easier to do things on the laptop than it is the phone. In any case, so if you've got questions, ask them, and we'll continue. This poem is called Finality. This is for Dawn. I float home across the plains, over this dark thread of road, past the lights along the Minnesota River, golden nails fastening shut the horizon, past the snow-covered fields reflecting the moon's wet light, until we can no longer tell what is land or water or sky, and we cannot tell which our brother rests in now. Everything to the east darkens, and the whole country closes around the heart of the Midwest, around its churches and its silos, its pilgrims journeying before death to kneel and kiss its winding fingers, its noble silence spreading between the Mississippi and the Rust Belt like a moth-torn quilt, a eulogy left unsaid at the edge of the lips. Death, though it is final, is also hesitant and unsure. It is the persistent silence which follows that convinces us this boy in the ground was the one, this land too, these factories and these barges sunning themselves in the gray light as if they might dip beneath the water and reemerge glistening and alive. These docks and these cranes, these warehouses angling into the shadows preserved in a death-like geometry, though tenuous, as if we clap and summon the Lord, if we stomp our feet until we cannot smell what keeps the body here, until the body shakes, then might these songs wake him, might these factories turn and light like a bulb screwed in, might we be sentenced like, not final, but running on forever, through the grammar of mourning, the grammar of laughter when laughter is all we have left, until all that is left is his skin and his bones, and we who buried him are only stories or ash at our grandchildren's mantles. And his name, spray painted on the Oak Park wall, is painted over or chips off and washes into the dirt. And his bones too become earth. And the bullet in his leg is all that remains and rests, a small black seed opening in his coffin. So So this next poem is the happy poem. Get ready. This is the, you know it's happy because it's called Joyous Work. See? It's in the title, so you know I'm not lying. My good friend and former roommate, Hugh Wynn, the incredible poet, argues it is not a happy poem. I argue it is, definitively, for joy is in the title. And it's just about how much I love to work with my hands. So we will read this poem to you, we together. We will all read this together. Shout it out loud. What if people did that in live readings? Like people, I love when people read along in the book, like at shows. It's really cool to see people engaging with like your physical book. But I would just love it. I mean, I would hate it, but I would love it if someone at a show just started screaming the fucking poem as I'm reading it. And then we had to like compete over who could be heard until we're just yelling at each other. That would be a wonderful duel. And I encourage someone to give it a shot. And once, if we ever encounter each other in the post-corona world. All right, here we go. If there is a perfect joy, it is similar to a fever and begins somewhere in the jowls, then wings out like a hand of cards thrust outward across a table. I know it has come over me. Once in a silo 80 feet deep, I was like a final breath working at the bottom of a lung, leveling out hay dropped from the claw sliding back and forth along the rafters. I pitched my weight for 12 hours, heaving the wet grass. I have seen some drunk men play the accordion at night when they forget they own anything at all, and so briefly they don't. Not even the music itself. The work of the body is the work of what? Not prayer. That's too simple. Not dumb luck either. No, it's more like an invocation left unsaid when it swells and kicks in the body like a frightened horse, and it merely burns. And we find there are other ways to pray, like working the palms raw, evening out a whole shorn field in a dark tunnel, piling to the top until finally you stand on some unknown tons of hay and step from the lip of the silo like a golden holy thing and fly among the rafters. And it is your exhaustion which carries you, which is, for an instant, the single thing you own and takes on the quality of the spirit, which you are surprised to find smells of wet grass, the cool rain outside, the swallows roosting, and the grease of the mechanical claw crying out, working back and forth, a hard, dark sea above you. Just yesterday, I think this is one of the older poems in the book. And one of the first poems, I think, that cued me into the fact that I was indeed writing a book and not just a group of poems. Also, there's a newish recording of me performing it. There's only 2 poems in this book, I think, that I slammed with, a poetry slam, so this is one of them. And the old video that's been up for years from the Rust Belt Regional Slam in Detroit back in like 2014 or 13 or 12 or some year long ago. I don't love that performance. And so there's a new one up, and I like that performance quite a bit more. So if you want to see more of a performative reading of this piece where I gesticulate and, do things like that, you can find that on Button's YouTube channel. But here we are for a much more subdued iteration of this poem, which is entitled Just Yesterday. Pain isn't worth any more than the words we can dig up to describe it. Tell me of the sinew unspun by metal, but make it pretty. Tell me of the collarbone reaching through the skin like a branch, but make it soft. Everyone wants us to spill poetically, in a way that goes down easy. They want us to speak of maps by referring to their borders and not by what's inside of them. I dreamt you still named. I dreamt you naked. I dreamt you leaking from time's advances. I dreamt you siphoning out your own life through the needle. I dreamt your spine crumbling like a palace of cards. I dreamt every dead person I know was the same and lived in the same cramped alley of my skull. I'll tell you these stories until the words materialize and I can stop up a wound. I know I might as well try to gather rain with a sieve, but God damn it, I need to try. I've been walking around believing the dead are like windows. This poem and other poems, a handful of rocks. I want to shatter each of your faces, oh family, oh friends. Like you might walk out from behind the gaps in your smiles. Sometimes I hold a word to my ear like a conch shell. Sometimes I curse the ocean for what it cannot or will not say. I surround these bodies with sentence after sentence, and the words chant like a crowd. The words become music. The words become an orchestra of flies. I almost believe you will wake up, all of you, together. I almost believe your name will slither its way back into your body and you will kick back to life like a junkyard cutlass and you will walk out of your own funerals laughing. How absurd. This choir of weeping. These caskets planted in the dirt like seeds. It is so cold in this winter's lexicon, this language of nothing, of once was or never will be again. Sometimes I want to kill my uncle for being a more miserable drunk than I was. Sometimes I want him to die already so I can just write about it. Sometimes I too want to be a poem. I don't want to be this pain, but the language used to unearth it. Sometimes I curse archaeologists for their basic tools, telling us basic things. Sometimes I think scientists are lazy. I too could dig a heart out of a chest, but what do any of them know about pulling the history from a body without killing it? Just yesterday, scientists discovered a new ligament in the human knee. Just yesterday, I found out I can't sleep for a whole new set of reasons. Just yesterday, I wrote and wrote and wrote and kept writing. I've committed to not killing anyone, especially myself. Just yesterday, I found new ways to say I miss you. My God, how I miss you all. Just a few more poems here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm not sure how many are tuning in. I don't have the YouTube up, but whether it's 5 or 100, I have no idea, but it's kind of all the same to me, that people would gather to watch me read poems. Is surreal and incredible. And I feel very, 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 very lucky. Lucky. I feel very lucky and very blessed, and just incredibly grateful. And I'm just in awe that people will, that I've been able to create something that people read and listen to, and gather to hear. It's surreal. And so thank you for real for coming to your computer to watch me read to you in my room. All right, this poem, secondly, finally, which is the title poem of my chapbook, which is out of print, but has mostly the same poems that are in here, except for a couple. Secondly, finally. Who tells your story now, heaven-faced boy? Sometimes I fear I may have killed you a second time. How silence is a kind of death. How having your story told for you is also a kind of death. Secondly, finally, I continue to begin with the end, as if that's all there is, as if that's where your story began, bled into the world through your own wounds. Some days I feel I've taken on your shadow and am the appropriator of your aunt's grief, which is dull and silent, like a round stone in the shoe, as it works its way into the skin and will eventually, through the blood, become a part of the body, a knob or handle in the bone, as if this grief could open us, a skeleton, a screen door, a bolt of silk unraveling. My memory of you cinches tight, and I tell the story from the beginning. This time, you are alive. This time, I say nothing. This poem's called The Middle Place, which is what I almost named the book The Middle Place, but my friends Hugh and Jeremiah said, no, you cannot. But I really wanted to, but I think they were right. And I'm glad I listened to them, because then I came up with this title, which is much better, I think. But I still got the title in the book. It's a poem. Yep, here it is. The Middle Place. Etched along each roof, the slender serrated teeth of the sky, the Lord's still mouth caught on the eaves. Every frozen thing starves. Stray dogs forage in the trash. The cat's carcass there since October rests against the fence. Small tufts rising through the snow like gray weeds, though still, in the darkening, small lights gold as yarrow. Maybe it's just the street lamps. A few triumphant stars, or my own yearning cast off the television by the dumpster. Jumper cables snaking out of the shattered screen, as though someone tried to revive the myths we live by. Here, in the long night of the North, we survive on recollection alone. I am, when I close my eyes, just slightly, thin as keyholes, a child again, spying on the distant life of my elders, on the other side of the living room door. If I stay here for a moment, just like this, I think I can catch each of their gazes as they pass over me, like the headlights of a single car passing at midnight, a smooth gloved hand sliding across the walls as it goes. And if I squint even tighter, I think I can keep them just a little longer. I can see the light by which each of my memories is lit. The trembling halo above my grandmother 20 years ago as she harvests raspberries alongside the dirt road. Her hands redden, also like light, until the light goes out. And my grandfather sings at his piano in the dark till his voice goes hoarse. He cannot remember the words. He cannot find the keys. If I can do anything, it is this. Carry a small flame back into my memory and let them warm their hands beside it. Sorry, I just wanted to take a minute. I felt like I was with my grandparents for a second. So I just wanted to pause and stay there as long as I could. Yeah. So this is the final poem of the evening. Actually, should I do it? Okay. I'm going to tell a story. It's about that last poem a little bit. And I'm only telling this story because Tanisha loves the story so very much, and I think it's the funniest story of all time. So Tanisha, this is for you, world's most amazing host. I appreciate you so much. They're typing in the thing. Oh, I love this story. Oh, I'm ready. I love you too. So this story. So what's funny about a lot of these places and stuff is that I really try to create a mythology and a magic around grief and around memory in this book, right? But so many of the places, obviously, they're way more complex than the tone or just the single instance that I'm giving you in this poem. And so in this poem, the middle place, where I talk about my old alleyway where I used to live, it was a very magical alleyway. Like strange things would happen in this alleyway all the fucking time. Oh my God, it was I miss that house. I miss that house and my garden there, in my bizarre alleyway. I mean, someone left like a literal ton of bricks in the shopping cart one time, and the city was going to fine us if we didn't get rid of the bricks. And I'm like, I can't fucking move the bricks. I don't know who gave them to us. So I took them all and I built a raised garden bed out of bricks because they were going to fine us. And then once there was a pile of dead fish in my parking spot, and not just like someone dumped a pile of dead fish, which would be weird and not appropriate, considering there's a literal fucking dumpster next to my parking spot. It is nothing to take the fish if you don't want the fish and just put them in the dumpster, right? But they put them on my parking spot, but they were like very neatly stacked, and it almost looked like a cake, like a dead fish cake. And they were almost braided. It was like very artful how it was done, which made it fucking horrifying. Anyway, so that's the preface. That's not actually the story. That's just to give you a sense of the bizarre things that would happen in our alleyway. And one night we had just, me and he had gotten our dog back in September. And so we maybe had the dog for a couple months. And he was very quiet. I hadn't heard him bark up until this point. And he had never been into any altercations or anything like that. And so I'm walking down the alleyway and there's some dudes hanging out. And, I'm just like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hey, what's up? And I keep walking. And, that's, what is it, like 10, 11, sometime at night. And then all of a sudden this dog just sprints out of nowhere. And it's like a little terrier, little terrier thing or some kind of small dog. My dog is a pit bull Ridgeback mix. He's like, now he's a little smaller, but at the time he was like 100 pounds. And this little dog, which is maybe like 20, 25 pounds, just goes for his neck. And Levis just almost eats the dog like in one bite and just starts thrashing this thing. And he's got the dog by the throat. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to kill the dog. And so these guys run over and we're trying to get the dogs apart. And and I'm just like, there's this point where I'm like, okay, if we don't get these dogs apart, like, this dog will die, right? And the guys had probably a similar thought because there's one dude who stumbles back and he pulls a pistol out of his waistband like he's gonna shoot my dog. And I like went into like superpower dad mode and I grabbed Levis by the collar and I like picked him up over my head and I slammed him on the ground so hard that he let go of the other dog and that dog like ran away. And I'm holding the dog there. I'm looking at this dude and he was like, man, I was gonna pop your dog, man. And I was like, oh my God, he's so drunk. He like could hardly stand up. And he like puts the gun back in his belt. And then his friend just goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Like he's freaking out. And he just kind of got his arms out like between us, almost like he's, breaking up a fight or whatever. And then he just goes, first of all, I didn't know you were strapped. like if you're going to just walk around carrying a gun, like you should let your friends know, right? He's like, I didn't know you're strapped. Second of all, you can't get mad at that man's dog. He was protecting his master. That's what he's supposed to do. Third of all, your dog should have been on a leash. And we're all just kind of listening to him. And I'm like, who is this amazingly reasonable friend you've got? Like, this guy's tremendous. Everybody should have a friend like this. And then he leans back and he's just like, I know this shit. I went to veterinarian school. I didn't finish, but I went. And I'm like, this is so bizarre. And then we all hung out in the alleyway for like 30 minutes and just chopped it up. We just hung out and they were nice guys. And I can't blame them. I mean, if a dog was about to kill my dog, like I might have to pop the dog too. Luckily, no dogs were popped and his dog ended up being fine. Dog was totally okay. All dogs were okay. All people were okay. But then they're like, all right, cool. Let's go to this party. But then the drunk guy with the gun like gets in the driver's seat. And I was like, is he what? No, put him in the other seat. My guy should be in the back. And then they did. Then they hopped down. They're like, they kind of had the same thing. They're like, no, get him in the back. So that's the story. And yeah, that was my alleyway. Most magical alleyway of all time. Just, and weirder stuff than all those things happened, but we don't have the time to get into those stories. They're too long and detailed and complex. And one day I'll write a book of short stories about the Morgan alleyway. But for now, I'll read to you my final poem, and then yeah, we'll get into some questions, and I'll probably introduce you to my dog. Actually, he's not allowed up in this part of the house because I'm allergic to dogs, but I really wanted one, so I got one. But we'll invite Levis up so you can all meet him and see his head, his just giant ass head, which he headbutted me when I came home, and he was so excited to see me. And when I got back from work and I was laying down to stretch, and he jumped up and just in the back of the head, and it was like pop and a flash in my head. I just laid there, and I was like, oh my God, I thought I was dead for a second. And then my hands didn't work, and then everything was dizzy and was moving, and I like couldn't stand up, and it was very bad. And I've been healing from it for like 9 months now, 8 months. So I don't know when or if it'll get better, or we're just gonna continue to have a really hard time with brain pain and lights and screens and noises. We will find out. But here is the final poem. Thank you again, everybody, for coming, for joining this live stream. I love you all very much appreciate you. And again, if you're just joining, maybe you joined in that story, which would be a bizarre time to join, but my name is Blythe. My book is The Only Worlds We Know, with button poetry. Yeah, it's its first birthday. And so you can pick yourself up a copy all weekend. There's a sale, 50% off. So if you want the hard copy or electronic copy in a Kindle or audiobook, it's 50% off. Also, I'm signing copies. So if you want a signed copy, it's $20. Personalized, I'll write a personalized note. 25, just go to Button's website. All the info is on there. It's all through the weekend. I think it's maybe over Sunday at midnight or something like that. So go do that if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram, Michael Lee Writes, and that's where I post things and do stuff, and I would love to connect with you there. All right, here's our last poem, and then we'll get into Q&A for a little bit. Decay and more decay. For my final wish, another final wish. The end is a kind of current. You could light a whole city on what is gone. A last breath stirs the pages of finished books on the mantle, gathering dust. Our skin lifts off, then settles. For my final trick, a final trick, the heart working in mundane ways. Each time you touch anyone, there's a chance your atoms will move in unison, parting, and your hand will pass through their body and become lodged there, in the jaw or behind the breast. Of course, this doesn't happen, but the thought of it almost makes my finger running across a naked spine in candlelight feel dangerous and permanent in this danger. Like you might remember this, and I might love you more in that moment than the moment we let go, parting, slipping by one another into the cold night. But it is the night that parts, wide and shivering. Thanks, y'all. That's the book, The Only Worlds We Know. If you've already got a copy, thank you so much for supporting small presses, for supporting me as a writer. I hope to have a second book out in the next couple of years of poems. I'm working on a novel, a collection of short stories. And I hope all these things I get to I'm lucky enough to give out to the world in the way that I've been lucky enough to give this out and send these stories out into the world. And so So yeah, hopefully that's what I'm going to be working on here while I'm in New York is those projects. So hopefully they'll be out to you soon. In the meantime, why don't we take maybe 10, 15 minutes or so, and I'm going to ask some questions. So Riley gathered a couple questions here. And it looks like there's 24 total, and Riley's going to feed 5 at a time. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can. We could be here all night answering questions, which I don't think I want to be respectful of Spencer and Tanisha and Riley's time and make sure we don't have them working through all hours of the night. And I would also love to go make some eggs and have a nice snack. Oh, Levis, come here, buddy. I want to introduce you to the internet. We'll see if he comes. He knows he's not allowed up here. Come on, buddy. So the first question from Frankie is, what made you choose the Rasmussen quote at the beginning of the book? What's a little more pain when pain's eternal? It just felt like that kind of encompassed a lot of what I was trying to work through the book, right? And kind of the limits and the limitlessness of grief and pain and memory. And when I think about leading with that quote, I think a lot about it. What feeling am I trying to give the reader as they're approaching the first poem, right? So I think about the title in the same way, The Only Worlds We Know, which again, to think about limits and limitlessness, what we can and cannot touch. And so think about the title and the quote leading us to that first poem, and try to almost set the groundwork or the ecosystem even of the world that we're entering of the book. So question 2 from Zohal. I apologize if I'm saying your name incorrectly. Hi, Michael. I'm Zohal. I was wondering if you have any advice for aspiring poets on how to get our work out to gain traction. Oh, perfect. Who is your favorite poet? I love your work. Thank you so much. So best way to get your work out there is just, well, there's so many, there's a lot of ways I think to do it, right? When I was getting my work out there, when I was a younger poet, there wasn't Instagram. I don't think. Maybe there was. I didn't have it. I didn't have a smartphone until a couple of years ago. But even, 2008, 2009, Twitter and Instagram and YouTube just weren't what they are now. And so I was just going to open mics constantly, right? And then I would just submit poems to journal. And so I think one thing was just finding as many ways as you can get your work out there. Now, because we're all social distancing, or we should be, and we're not gathering in large crowds, obviously open mics in person is not as much of a thing, but there are still so many open mics that are happening virtually. And so I really encourage folks to find an open mic where you can read your work out loud there. If you've got your social media, Twitter and Instagram, start sharing your work there. And trying to gain some followers and maybe gain some feedback and creating an editing community for yourself, right? That's really how we improve, is having folks say, hey, that line was great, but you do this other thing very similar earlier in the poem, and I think you could actually cut it because it was more effective early on. Or you do that simile thing like 9 times and it's not effective in this poem. I think you should cut it, right? Or hey, this is perfect, great, run with it. That's really important. And so I think as far as gaining traction, I would say getting to open mics, whether in person in the future or online now, using social media to your advantage. Also, I guess TikTok is a thing. I don't know how TikTok works. God, I sound so old, but I just don't know how it works. But if you have that, I'm sure there's some way to get poems on there. And then submitting to journals. Journals all take online submissions. I just started submitting places. I just guessed, right? And then pieces started to land. And then when I would land pieces in places, I would start to get free journals sent to me. where I picked up in, and then I would read them. I'd say, oh, I love this poet. Let me see what journal they're in. And then I get that journal and say, oh, I love this journal. Let me submit here. And I started to kind of build almost like a map for myself. There's a program called Duotrope, which you can kind of skip that whole process and it'll map it out itself. If you're interested in finding journals that are similar and like what their aesthetic is and what they're looking for, because 9,900, 99 out of 100 times you're going to get rejected, no matter who you are, just because there's thousands of poems being sent out, and every journal has a different aesthetic, and every issue has a different aesthetic. And so more often than not, it's just about this poem doesn't quite fit, then it is like, oh, this poem sucks, or we don't like it, which is, I think, because we're artists and we're sensitive, we take it that way. But a lot of times it's about finding the right fit for your piece. So, all right, Alexa, do you have any organizations that you like working and organizing with in Minneapolis? Yes, absolutely. Appetite for Change is a great one. They do wonderful urban agriculture and food justice work on the north side. I worked there for a couple of years. Avenues for Homeless Youth is another. It's a great youth organization for young people experiencing homelessness. I worked there for a number of years, also on the north side. They also have a program called the Host Home Program, which started as the LGBTQIA Host Home Program, where, because historically so many shelters were not safe for queer youth, Rocky Samoy created a program that was about engaging community members to open up their homes to LGBTQ youth in Minneapolis to come and stay with them, right? Not in like a foster sense, not in an adoption sense, but as almost like if you were going to study abroad and you have a host family, right? A similar thing. And then they have a case manager with Host Home Program who's meeting with that young person. And these families go through training. Oftentimes they're older folks in the LGBTQ community that are taking young folks in, and so that's a great program. They do really amazing work. So those are three that are great. Let's see. Reclaim the Block, MPD 150, Black Visions Collective are some organizations that are newer and they've been around for a couple of years, but they're doing really important work around police abolition right now. And so follow them on Instagram, see how you can get involved with them, how they, what support they're in need of. But they're doing incredibly important work. Also, Juxtaposition Arts, also on the north side, is amazing work. And I'm going to stop there because I can keep going, but those are some of my favorite organizations. Say Tool is also really good. Take Action if you're looking for more like electoral political stuff or like union organizing. Those are great. And now we will continue. The dog story later. We hear the dog story. I think that was maybe the brain injury that was referred to. So I think we got that. Levis, do you want to come up and meet the internet? Come here, buddy. Come. No, he knows better. He's not going to come up here. I'm sorry, everyone. I'll post a photo of him on Instagram tomorrow. All right. Question 5 from Christine. You are going back to graduate school for writing. Yes, I am. Do you think going to college to be a writer poet has shaped your writing? What do you hope to continue to grow in? LOL, didn't mean to send those just yet. Oh, that wasn't from Christine. That was from Riley. So here's the thing. I have taken in undergrad, which was very like 8-9 years it took for me, and it was very tumultuous, and I dropped out for a time. I took a couple writing classes. They were not super influential for me as a writer. The most influential part for me as a writer that was connected to college was the College Union Poetry Slam, and meeting peers at the U of M, and we were on a poetry slam team together, and we would workshop and edit together. And that process was really integral to my growth as a writer. Specifically, when I learned how to edit and workshop other people's work, I became a much better writer because I started to read work differently and started to really identify what was effective in other people's work, and what I picked up on or what I did connect with as well, and was then starting to apply some of those same questions to my own work when I was writing. Why am I doing this here? Why this language here? What am I trying to accomplish with this section, right? And I just started to approach my work differently, both as a writer, but then in the drafting phases, more as an editor, which really helped me. And so I think finding a writing community, mine happened to be connected to the college, but wasn't an official college program. Like we made a student group, but we had no college funding, and actually met everybody in the group. I met them at the local slams out in the city, and at open mic nights. And so I didn't even know that we went to the same school for like the first months of knowing them. So school wasn't a huge part in shaping my writing, but a writing community was, and also just like traveling and doing a lot of work with people and just, life experience, just going out and just doing things was really important, honestly. But because I didn't have as much focus time in a school setting to really dedicate to my craft, that's part of why I'm going back to school now, is I want to have that financial support to just write, right? Not worry about working 40 to 50 hours a week organizing or anything like that, which is good and important and meaningful work and work that I will do forever. But I feel like I owe it to myself as a writer, and I owe it to my work to prioritize it as like the number one thing in my life for a couple of years. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I hope to grow in. I really want to grow in my fiction, to be honest. I really want to grow in my fiction. Let's see. So we got some more questions. All right, so those were 5. I'm waiting on Riley to send me some. Oh, here are some more. Adrian, what's up? How are you? What are some things that bring you joy every day? Oh my gosh, coffee. Every day, coffee brings me joy. Every night feels like Christmas Eve. Like I know I get to wake up and have a coffee. So coffee brings me great joy. My dog brings me an incredible amount of joy. He's brought me an incredible amount of pain as well, giving me a concussion, brain injury and all that. But I really enjoy walking with him every day and seeing him just be happy and get excited by smelling things and meeting other dogs and like running around. Like it really makes me happy. Exercise makes me really happy. Books make me very happy. Gardening, building things, writing are some of the things that make me really happy. Yeah. How do I practice self-care when writing about addiction, grief, and mental health as someone in recovery? Really, really good question. So one of the dangerous things I think about slam, and not just slam, but I think slam, in part because it's so visible, and it is a really good format for people to express trauma. Because part of, I think, healing is about analyzing and going through what has happened and working with that story, but then also presenting it to somebody, right? That's why therapy is awesome, right? Painful often, but like very helpful, is because you get to articulate the things that have harmed you and the things that you're struggling with. And so writing can often be like that, but writing is not therapy, right? And to, I think, approach something without a community, and without already having those self-care practices in place, whether that be a therapist, for me, that's also going to recovery meetings, 12-step groups, and that sort of thing. Those are 2 of my really big things. Of course, there's like meditation and prayer, which I fluctuate on depending on the year and that sort of thing. I mean, I do stretch every morning, and that's kind of a meditative practice for me, is doing a little bit of yoga. But I think having those things in place makes it safe to write about grief and addiction and just other traumas that we might have experienced. So yeah, I would say that. Yeah, and then too, like, just, I mean, that's another part of having a community is so important. I mean, I remember, Riley is on the background here, like, he's taking all the questions from y'all behind the computer. But Riley was one of my first poetry slam coaches, and one of my first poems, my friend Stephen, who was killed, were golden, was like the first time I'd ever really worked through it, right? I didn't even touch that in therapy, right? And it was it was so hard to write about, and I almost relapsed, and I was struggling with suicidal ideation. And I wasn't prepared for what it was going to do to me to relive that at all. And I was not ready for it. And it wasn't safe, frankly, for me to write about it. But I was very lucky that I had folks who were so supportive, like Riley, that I could call Riley at 1, 2 in the morning. You know, I was really active in recovery at that time as well. You know, I was calling my sponsors and stuff like that. But I barely survived that poem. We're Golden was the name of the poem. I barely survived that poem. And I think I might not have, had I not had a support group and had not been very active in recovery. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Harley, use your book. We'll teach you a 10th grade poetry class. What? Oh, that's dope. That's so cool. Oh man. I hope the students loved it. Yours was the writing that my students responded to best. Oh, great. If I just keep reading. Oh, it's amazing. What was the inspiration for the content and structure of the self-erasure trio? Yeah. Okay, so I was doing an erasure workshop with students at the time, where I would tear out pages of duplicate books that I had, and we would go through and we'd block them out, block out words, and make a poem on a page, right? And so we would do that, and you know, because first time poets will often, oh, I can't write poetry, I can't. I'm like, no, you can. You just believe you can, right? Use the language you have, and it's about how do you organize that language. And so, of course, you're circling words on the page that you know and that you already have in your vocabulary, and you're creating a poem out of that, right? And so folks are like, oh shit, I can do this, right? And then we'd take those words, we'd write them down, we'd scramble them, and then folks would then make a new poem with those same words. So I was doing that workshop a lot with young people in particular. And so I was like, well, what if I did a erasure of my own work? And part of that was around when I was looking a lot at disappearance, right? And looking at like the poems like The Pill, and how through addiction is kind of this disappearing act, and losing parts of ourselves, and losing experience, and losing our sometimes life, but losing memory, and so much about, I think some of the very negative experience in my life has been a process of just loss, right? And about dissolving and disappearance. And that includes, I think, memory too, sometimes around trauma. Sometimes things are burned into your memory, and sometimes things are like wiped clean. And part of healing is not just discovering like not just addressing what haunts us, but also addressing and discovering like what we don't know is there. What our body has hidden to protect us, and that sort of thing. And so I was exploring those concepts, and it felt like an erasure of my own work. Talking about memory and my life was a really good way to do it. And so that was how I got the idea for that poem. Bisbee, I work in traumatic brain injury as a speech therapist. Oh, I need help. Bisbee, we have to talk. Was returning to writing challenging? Yes. How, as a therapist, do you think I can help foster creativity in my patients? Oh, good question. I began to only write longhand and with a typewriter. I don't use my computer to write anymore. And so I think now, especially in 2020, folks are really used to writing on computers. For the last 30 years, that's what we've been doing. People are especially used to writing on their phones. I taught 9th grade for a bit, and a lot of students were writing essays on their phones, in part because a lot of young folks didn't have computer access or internet access at their homes, and so they were writing all their essays on their phones. But we're just so inundated with these things, right? But I can't engage with these anymore in the way that I used to be able to. If I want to write for 6 hours or even 2 hours, I can't be looking at a screen. And so I got back into it by writing longhand. And so as much as I think folks with brain injuries can be doing tactile things that don't involve screens, but that do stimulate the brain. I think that's really important. I know sometimes reading can be hard with like the movement of the eyes can like create the sensation of just being really dizzy when the brain is off kilter. I don't get that so much. I do on the phone because the block of text is smaller than on a book. But I think anything that's analog has been for me very healing. It does tire the brain out sometimes, but just it's that is what helped me realize that I'm gonna be okay, even if my life is going to be different from here on out, is that I can still write poems and stories in a notebook. I can type them up on my typewriter. And so, yeah. So it's certainly just that process gave me a lot of hope. All right. This one is from May. I feel like I've been an aspiring writer for years now, got a degree in it and still do not write. How do you push yourself to do it, to get the words out there? Oh man. I mean, is like anything that you want to cultivate, you've got to make time for it, right? If you have a garden and you're not out there weeding, if you're not watering your plants, they're not going to grow, or they're not going to grow in the way you want them to. They won't grow as much, right? Or they'll be taken over by weeds or what have you. And so you got to cultivate that time. For me, routine is very important. I'm a very routine-oriented person. I get very thrown off when I lose routine, especially like creatively, and now with the TBI even more so. But I try to build up a routine where I can put writing into it, where I know this time and this time I'm going to write. And in the same way, like we do that for work, we do that for meals, like we do that for other people all the time. I got to pick up my kid at this time and this time. So what are ways that we can do that for ourselves, for our writing, even if it's just like 10, 15 minutes. Once you begin to, a day, if you can do that every day for a little bit, you start to build it into the practice to where like your brain knows, oh, it's 9 o'clock. Now we write, right? Back when I used to write at coffee shops, I would have one coffee shop where I would do grants and like grant writing and emails and stuff like that. And one coffee shop where I would work on my novel. And I would always go at the same time, because then when I would go at that time at the novel shop, I'd call it, my brain knew, here we work on the novel, right? And so I think building in routine to create like associativeness around creativity is really important. Another one from Adrian. Hello. It took you 8 years to put this book out. Correct. How did you keep yourself motivated and from becoming impatient? What are some ways did the book change and grow over those years? Great questions. It took 8 years. I gave up probably twice, put the book away, didn't touch it for at least like a year or two. Maybe not 2 in a row, but there are multiple times that I just kind of gave up. I mean, I submitted this book like in years 4 and 5, or years, like 3, 4, 5. I submitted it like 30, 35 times, and it was, consistently rejected. And I kind of just slowly just kind of gave up, and not even like a conscious thing. It just happened. Taking time away was important. Focusing on other projects was important, and coming back to it. I came back to it a few times with some real clarity. For me, the biggest thing though was when I got that award to go down to Key West. And that was awesome. The whole experience was amazing, but the biggest part of it was the workshop that I was in. The workshop got me thinking about my poems differently and got me writing some of the like newest poems in here, like come in like the few weeks after that workshop. Some of my favorite poems in this book come after that, right? It's like a lot of that last section. The poem Out There comes out of that time. I think Nicholas Plus comes out of that time. The Middle Place comes out of that time. I think Decay and More Decay might come out of that time. So like 30% of the book comes right after that workshop with Rowan Ricardo Phipps. And I think without that workshop, I may never have completed the book. Because I think it was a few months later that I signed the contract with Button. Yeah. So yeah, I think workshops for me are really important. Ways I stay motivated, and motivated was I think keeping that community. For me, again, workshops. Impatient. That's the hardest one, especially when you see maybe your peers are publishing work earlier than you are, right? I mean, my peers who I came up with are poets like Danette Smith and Hugh Wynn, and they both came out with books. I think both had 2 books out before I had a book out. And there's a couple ways to approach that. One is get all stressed out and go, oh, why isn't my book out? What's wrong with me? Or acknowledge that everybody has a different process, and that we're all in our own timelines, right? I always remind myself, Toni Morrison's first book came out when she was, I think, 50, right? And she's one of the greatest writers ever, right? Probably the greatest American writer that we've ever had, right? So I think that's very important. It's just giving yourself the time to develop as a person and as a writer, and being patient, and just knowing like some of these poems take a long time. I mean, the poem out there, I was trying to write that poem for like 9-10 years, and every iteration of it just sucked. And then suddenly just blah, blah, like just one day just fell out, and I wrote the poem in like 15 minutes. And I've been trying for like 10 years to write it, and then the whole thing just came out, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm so glad that I had not settled on an earlier version of it, because it wouldn't have been right. And I'm very glad that I was forced to wait, because I think there is a world where like this book could have got picked up in earlier form by a press or somebody. And if it would have been the book that I had at year 5 versus year 8, I would be very sad, I think, especially knowing what I have now versus what I had. I'd be very sad to have that book out in the world. It wouldn't feel right. And so I think, yeah. What are some ways the book change and grow? And I think this will be the last question that I'm actually going to answer, because my brain is getting like super shut down right now. So we'll end on this. And again, for the folks who ask questions that we're not able to get to, I apologize. Maybe what I'll do is get a list of these questions and do an Instagram live in the next week or two to get them answered. That's what I'll do. So I'll still have Riley send me these questions. And then maybe Sunday, or no, Rachel's reading Sunday, sometime next week, I'm going to like take some time away from the screen for the next couple of days. For the most part, I'll answer the rest of these questions. But to end on this question, what are some ways, the book change and grow over the year? It was very focused on my friend Steven's death for a long time. Oh, sorry, my brain just glitched out. What was the question? What are some ways the book change and grow? Yeah, so I was very focused on Stephen and like that one instance of grief. And I realized I wanted to really write a lot more about memory, about different types of losses and recoveries. And then the book just needed to expand. Okay, I'm totally pooped. There's 5 more questions just came in, and they're really good questions, but I don't have the mental capacity at this time to answer them. TBI is shutting me down. But I'm going to answer these. So Riley's going to send them to me, and I'm going to do an Instagram live, and these are all going to get answered, and I'll post them to my Instagram page, and they'll be permanent. They'll live there. So if you can't get the live, you can watch the thing later on. Okay, I'm so tired. I got to go take my brain meds and go to sleep. But I love you all so very much. Again, I'm Michael Lee. This is my book, 50% off all weekend. Michael Lee writes on Instagram. I'm going to answer the rest of these questions. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I love you all.
Everybody, give it up one more time for Michael Lee. That was just phenomenal. I found myself, I was moving. I don't even have words. That's how important and just mind blowing that experience was. And I'm so, so grateful to have gotten the privilege to hear such an amazing book read by an even sweeter human who really cares, and you can just really feel that throughout the book and the way that Michael Lee was talking. And I just hope that you loved tonight as much as I did. um, I just want to take a moment, once again, just thank you for your love and support. We are so happy to have you here with us consistently, coming to these online virtual shows. I know they're not like the real things, but they are still so important to us. And I hope that you loved this show so much that you'll come to a second one at the end of this week, Sunday night, here at the same time, same YouTube channel. Different stream though. Click on the different Rachel Wiley video that has this great slide that's being shown to you right now. We are celebrating Rachel Wiley's release of her original book, Fat Girl Finishing School. It's got a new foreword, a great, amazing new cover, and Rachel is going to be accompanied by Ebo Barton and Golden to celebrate its coming into the world. So I really hope that you join us on Sunday, August 16th at 7 p.m. Central Time. Also, if you loved this and you like what Button does, I want to let you know about our friends at Awful Good Writers. Buddy Wakefield and a bunch of our friends are putting together this phenomenal poetry festival. It's like the Warped Tour of poetry. It's a huge summertime event, and Button has the honor of being on that docket. We have 10 amazing authors forthcoming, some that you already know about, just like getting everyone excited. We've got Blythe, we've got Rudy, we've got Sabrina Benaim, Kaye, Bianca Phipps, who's releasing a book with us, Javon Johnson, and just some other faves. Ollie Schminkey, someone who lives here in Minneapolis and also does a lot of work with us, as well as is on Button Poetry Live. Like, just tons of our favorite people who are going to be reading. And while that show isn't free, it is phenomenal, and you can buy a day pass or you can buy a full festival pass. If you buy the full festival pass using the code BUTTON, will get you a discount, and you will have access to those for the remaining of August, and they have been talking about extending that even beyond that. So if you're interested in that, please check out the links below. Be sure to get a ticket. Come see us on, I believe it's a Monday night, August 24th. We would love to have you for the Heavy Hitters Festival. And if not, just show some love to our friends at Awful Good Writers. Thank you so very much, everyone, once again. My name is Tanisha Nicole. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time being your host. Michael Lee was fantastic. Celebrate The Only Worlds We Know. Purchase his book, half off, $8. Or you can get a personalized signed copy for $25, a regular signed copy for $20, and really just take care of yourselves and have a good night. And I look forward to being able to do this with you again soon. Bye-bye.